this is a nice just little, this is good for you guys to go through later and make sure you understand it. Like just, you know, we've got a loss of plasma proteins in the interstitial space. It's going to increase the, right? Just kind of go through it and so that you understand. But we don't, it's everything we just talked about. It's nothing kind of new. So I don't like going through these slides because these aren't really patho. These are like, you guys can go through and talk about them yourselves. Here's that compression stocking we're talking about. We talked about why that works, right? Because it's increasing the hydrostatic pressure outside in the interstitium, stopping the interstitium from just stretching full and full and full of that fluid. It's saying, you got to stop here. So then that creates pressure that pushes the fluid back into the vein or the capillary. So we talked about that. We'll talk about why salt intake later. Treatment though, really treatment for, so yes, we decrease salt intake. Actually, we'll talk about it now. Water follows salt. This is something, write it down, remember it forever. Water follows salt. Salt goes down, water goes down. Salt goes up, water goes up. That's it. Just remember that forever. And so we want to decrease salt intake because if we build up an intake of water follows salt. Thank you, Kieran. If we have that buildup of salt, we're going to have a buildup of fluid. And we have a buildup of fluid, right? You guys can work that through on your own. Diuretics work with your diuretic system in your body that we'll talk about later. And what they do is they take fluid and they flush it out into, flush it out through your urine. Sorry, they use the kidneys to flush it out. No big deal. I just want to see if there's anything here. You can have localized edema. We talked about that last week. Dependent edema. All of these are just, you guys know all this stuff. I hope from your other courses. Sometimes we'll call it third spacing. Just a heads up in case you see that on an exam. Third spacing. Third space is your interstitial space. It's not in the cell. It's not in the blood vessel. It's in between. So it's in the third space. Sometimes edema will be called third spacing. You'll never hear that in real life, but in textbooks you will, and in class. Explain each type of edema, including manifestations. Okay, you guys, this is not patho. This is stuff. Are you guys okay with this stuff? Right? The difference between localized and generalized edema. Yeah, that's what I figure. Let's go through that. Ooh, that's some nice pitting edema right there. Beautiful. Again, third spacing, really, for our purposes, just think of it as edema. Basically, we've had too much fluid that's moved into the third space or the interstitial space. It's just a non-functional area. The fluid builds up in there, it gets trapped, and then we end up having to somehow get rid of it, either through diuretics or using the stockings, compression stockings. Sorry. Excuse me. Third spacing, some other types of third spacing here, pleural effusion. Pleural effusion is a buildup. Again, you've got, yes, sorry, I had to think about it. You've got your lungs here. They just pretend they look like lungs and shut up. And you've got this thing around the lungs, right? And if you get this buildup of fluid here, it's called a pleural effusion in this space around the lungs. Right? Again, that's an interstitial space that is useless, right? And so we call that's part of third spacing as well. Ascites is a buildup of fluid inside of, I was cutting out again, so I was just taking a break. Ascites is that buildup of fluid inside of the abdomen, usually caused by liver disease. We'll talk about that in one of your units later.